So the big narrative is Donald Trump. I mean, he's the Trump in the room. He's the elephant in the room. Donald Trump's candidates, many of his candidates did lose. And here's a hilarious reaction from Democrat reptile James Carville.
I'm sitting here saying, if you put everything in a computer, we should have lost 57 seats. Yeah. Easy. Yeah. 4 or 5 Senate seats. And the reason is really Donald Trump. I mean, he bought people out to vote against this. He had a suppressive effect. He out-Trumped inflation. He out-Trumped crime. He out-Trumped the normal cycle of the first off-year election with an incumbent president. I mean, I think when political historians unearth this, they're going to find so much more that we missed this morning.
What cracks me up about this is there's Morning Joe and, his wife and James Carville basically saying the Democrats suck. So how come nobody says to them, so why are you voting for them? What a mess they made. They should have won. They should have won. But nobody says, so why are you supporting them? Why are you out there promoting them? So DeSantis won big in Florida, and so people eager to get rid of Trump are saying, Trump is over, it's DeSantis is the future, and people who hate Trump or are afraid of him are saying Trump will never be over. And Trump is I think, acting very badly. I'm sorry. He's calling Ron DeSanctimonious again, which is not that good a nickname. He tweeted he's an average Republican governor with great public relations and saying that DeSantis never could have won the first time without him, which is all childish nonsense. Who cares? Obviously, DeSantis won on his governance. And a lot of people say, well, don't encourage this, don't talk about the fight, but the fight is going to come. The fight is going to come. There is no way. This is politics. These are incredibly ambitious, egotistical men. They are going for the big power. They are going to fight it out. We're going to have to survive it and be able to beat the Democrats. So what did happen on this? And I've been thinking about this because I just have not heard a narrative that really convinces me. Tucker Carlson said, interestingly, that he feels that a lot of this had to do how the early voting, and there's no question that is something to do with it. He was talking about the media. That always is a factor. And the fact is that Trump's candidates did lose winnable elections, and all the candidates that the Democrats supported, hoping they'd be bad candidates, they all lost. So that strategy worked, that ugly, cynical strategy, but it worked, and working is a big deal in politics. Politics is about winning, so you can do the things you want to do, and that worked for the Democrats. The most telling loss for me was Herschel Walker in Georgia, where Brian Kemp won despite MAGA and Trump attacking him because he wouldn't support the big steal narrative. Kemp not only won big because he's a good governor, he's done a good job for Georgia, and he lifted all the other candidates, but Herschel Walker couldn't get to the finish line, and now they have to have a runoff and work it out there. But a lot of the other candidates, Doug Mastriano, lost in Pennsylvania. But Blake Masters doesn't look like he's going to make it. And Trump's attitude about this was ridiculous. He was on TV before the results came in, and here's what he said.
You've endorsed more than 330 candidates this election cycle. Tonight, win or lose, the results for Republicans, how much of that will be because of Donald Trump?
Well, I think if they win, I should get all the credit, and if they lose, I should not be blamed at all, okay? But it'll probably be just the opposite. When they win, I think they're going to do very well. I'll probably be given very little credit, even though in many cases I told people to run, and they ran, and they turned out to be very good candidates. They've turned out to be very good candidates, but usually what would happen is when they do well, I won't be given any credit, and if they do badly, they will blame everything on me. So I'm prepared for anything, but we'll defend ourselves. I think we had a lot to do with it. We had a lot to do with the, I think, success of what's going to happen. And many of these candidates where I was criticized are now turning out to be great candidates.
So I'm sorry, that's the attitude of a 4-year-old. It's not my fault if they lose, but it's all to my credit if they win. Think about it. Just stop for a minute. Put your emotions about Trump aside. That is the attitude of a 4-year-old. Now listen. When I talk about purifying your emotions, with Trump, my perceptions have stood me very well, okay? When Trump ran the first time, this company was basically me, Ben, and Jeremy, and Knowles was kind of a minor player. And I was the only one I was the first person to come in and say I'm voting for Trump, and I took a lot of flack for it. It was not ugly flack. It wasn't mean or anything like that. But I was an outlier. But to me, it was an easy choice. It wasn't a pleasant choice, but it was an easy choice. And I voted for him. I supported him in all the wonderful things that he did. I told you for 4 years that he was a tragic character who might lose because of the very characteristics that made him win and accomplish so many good stuffs. I told him when he lost the election, I said before he should stop the big steal narrative and make sure we don't lose the Senate in Georgia, and he didn't do that. And now, here's what I feel about Donald Trump. I do not feel Donald Trump, the ex-president, is Donald Trump the president. I don't feel this is the man who ran in 2016. Every single person who loses a presidential election goes a little bit nuts, and Trump is a big personality with a big ego, and I feel he has gone big nuts, Al Gore decided the world was going to end because the sun was too hot after he lost the presidential election. Remember, he grew that long beard. They all do this stuff. Hillary Clinton has been drinking herself into the pit ever since she lost. And Trump is a narcissist, and he can't accept the fact that he lost. And as I've said a million times, it doesn't matter whether the election was stolen if you can't prove it. And all it does is ruin everything. And he picked these guys solely on the question of whether or not they supported his big steal, and he attacked people who didn't support it, even if they were doing a good job and even if they had a chance to win. And that was wrong. Bingo. That was a wrong thing to do. I mean, morally wrong. It was strategically wrong too, I think, but it was morally wrong. And I think that when you think about that, you really do have to think about that, because politics is not about honor. It's not about decency. It's not about right and wrong. It's not about freedom. It's about winning so you can get those things. And that doesn't mean you lie and cheat and steal to win. It simply means you have to strategize and do a good job. And the strategy of you have to support me essentially is empty of content. And this is the thing that I see. J.D. Vance won because he established himself as a person with a point of view. He's a highly intelligent man who has had a very interesting life and has learned a lot. I read his book. It's the book of a man who has learned from what has happened to him. And so, yes, he was supported by Trump and supported Trump, but he established himself as his own man. If Mehmet Oz is MAGA, then I'm the Queen of Romania. I mean, how is he? What's MAGA about him? Except his support of Trump, except that he was willing to back Trump. The guy in Baldock in New Hampshire, what did he have to say except that he supported Trump? Herschel Walker, very questionable personality. I like the guy, but he's, obviously done a lot of things in his life that make him a questionable guy as a candidate. All he did was support Trump. And I think that Trump's candidates lost because they were empty of everything but Trump. See, Trump and MAGA are one thing. Trump and an agenda that I can support. That's why I voted for him twice, right? I voted for him because between his agenda and Hillary's agenda, I knew which one was the right one. And now, after the election, this post-presidency Trump is not the same guy. He is empty of everything but Trump. And Trump is just as much a deficit as a personality as he is a positive. And I think he's more of a deficit. A lot of people turned out to vote against him in the last election. A lot of people voted against his candidates because there was nothing in them but him. They voted for Vance because there was Vance in him, and he's a good candidate that way. So it's not just the fact that they were bad candidates or they didn't go to the right places or they talked funny or anything like that. It was because they didn't say anything except that they didn't represent anything but Trump. MAGA has become empty of everything but Trump, and I think that that's bad, I think that that is a bad thing. And, It used to be when they attacked Trump and they were so unfair to him and the press was so unfair and the Democrats it was just terrible. And he said, they're not attacking me, they're trying to attack you, but I'm in their way. And I thought, well, there's a lot of truth to that. But now he's not representing us. He's representing him when he just goes out and says, you have to support the big steal. He's not representing me. He's, before he was. He really was. And he did things I disliked. I told you about them, but he was also doing great stuff, and I celebrated that all around the clock, constantly. I just think he has emptied himself out because his ego is so big and that he's taken that loss. He is not the same guy. So he didn't hurt the GOP because he was Trump. He hurt the GOP because he was nothing but Trump. And I think that that's a real problem. So You know, when you look at DeSantis, the thing that really gets me about DeSantis, this is the other thing, I think Ben was talking about this a little bit backstage about competence. And yes, of course you have to be competent, but Trump, for a lot of his presidency, Trump did a really good job. You know, the time when basically I feel that this change came over him was with COVID, when I heard him complaining on TV about how mistreated he was by the press while people were stacking up bodies on the streets in New York. It's the only time in my entire life I have ever done anything political behind the scenes that I called up his campaign and said, you got to tell him to stop. And the message got to him. I'm told that the message got to him, and he did seem to change it up a little bit. But like now he's all that. He is all that guy. So the thing about Ron DeSantis, you can talk about his competence. He is competent. He did a great job with the hurricane, the economy, opening up the state after COVID, which Brian Kemp did too. And that's the thing that nobody in the press wants to talk about because he proved how wrong they were. But listen to his speech, his victory speech, and hear what he emphasizes about what he did.
We chose facts over fear. We chose education over indoctrination. We chose law and order over rioting and disorder. Florida was a refuge of sanity when the world went mad. We stood as a citadel of freedom for people across this country and indeed across the world. We faced attacks. We took the hits. We weathered the storms, but we stood our ground. We did not back down. We had the conviction to guide us, and we had the courage to lead.
That's a cultural statement. It's a series of cultural statements. People don't turn out for competence. People aren't inspired by competence. It's a baseline. They want competence. But nobody knows whether Mehmet Oz would have been competent or that Bolduc, nobody knows whether they would have been competent. Nobody knew that DeSantis would have been competent. That's why he only won by a small margin the first time. Now he won by a big margin because they know it. But nobody votes for competence. That's the baseline thing. They vote for a vision. He had a vision. You remember when my friend Jenna Ellis, who I just love her to death, but she came on and we had this discussion about his standing up to Disney and saying, I'm going to take away your special privileges if you give me problems about this bill on parental freedom. And she said, no, that's against the First Amendment. I said, it's good politics and it's the right thing to do and they deserve it and they're getting special treatment anyway, so they lose special treatment from the government because they're messing around in politics. I think that that's perfectly all right. Sending those illegals to Martha's Vineyard. A lot of people said to me, well, that's mean. Yeah, it's mean, but politics gets mean. And it was a beautiful parable that told us everything we needed to know about the people in Martha's Vineyard who were sitting around with their cocktails saying, yes, of course, the border should be open. Oh, my God, so here, let's bust them out. I think it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. He stood up to the press. Listen to some of this stuff. This is quoting from a Wall Street Journal piece by Dave Seminara. He says, no Florida newspaper with a significant readership endorsed Mr. DeSantis. They echoed the national media and excoriating him. The Miami Herald opined that Governor Ron DeSantis' Florida is a place of meanness. It's a place where dissent is muzzled, where personal rights triumph over the greater good, where winning is more important than unity, especially if that victory moves him closer to a White House. This is all this stuff they were writing about him, but it didn't matter. He stood up to them. He proved the important thing, that the press doesn't matter if you stand up to them and have a vision. It's not just yelling at the press. But Ron Johnson in Purple, Wisconsin, Chuck Grassley, they took on the FBI, Hunter Biden, the COVID cartel, as they now call him, and they won re-election despite massive spending against them. Fearless leadership can change people's hearts, and I think that is really important right now. And look, this could change. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing right now. Right now, Trump has lost that capacity to change people's hearts except to support him because he's empty of everything but him. MAGA has become an empty shell because of his ego being violated, because he's not the same after that loss, because he cannot accept the loss, which, as I say, whether it was stolen or not, doesn't matter unless you can prove it. So, right now, DeSantis is the future of the party. It can all change. They're going to have to fight it out. But just remember to keep your powder dry. Remember, winning. They say winning isn't everything. In politics, winning is everything. Again, that doesn't mean you rape and kill and cheat and lie, but it does mean you strategize and pick the people who can go forward. Right now, that's an open question. Trump is acting extremely badly. He's acting extremely egotistically. I do not think his candidates lost because they were bad at being candidates. I think they lost when they were empty of everything but Trump. And I think that is a real problem for Trump going forward. For more Klavan-y wonderfulness, like and subscribe. And please subscribe to the Andrew Klavan Podcast.